This is the 12th general election we are seeing since 1970. And over a period of time, we have seen a number of elections where public will was not translated into the governments which later on were formed. I think major problem in Pakistan is the duality of control on governance. Who really is the party which is mandated to run the affairs of the state, and who are the people who are probably pulling the levers of power?
There are people behind who are controlling everything, and this time around it is the PTI which is being sort of squashed between the courts and the constitutional institutions. And as we speak, Imran Khan has been sentenced to 10 years in prison in the Cypher case. PTI candidates now will have to contest the elections as independents, will face difficulty keeping their elected members in line through the tenure of the next National Assembly. Do you think stripping PTI of its symbol is in fact stripping people of their right of political participation? Assalamu alaikum and hello, this is Faryal on New Wave Global. Cricket is a game of fast fluctuating fortunes, but politics in Pakistan are more so, and paradoxically, while the only constant in Pakistani politics is change, nothing really changes here. With the long overdue general elections just around the corner, observers point out the apparent lack of even a pretense of fair play. Also visible is the relative dearth of public interest amid hollow slogans and age-old proclamations. Though the 2024 polls are taking place against the backdrop of perhaps the most serious poly-crisis to ever plague the country, it has not managed to budge the cliched discourses of our leaders. What's most unfortunate is the well-founded fear that what is being termed a farce about to be enacted on the electoral stage might not bring much yearned stability and relief to the country. I welcome here Mr. Ahmed Bilal Mehboob, founder and president, Pakistan Institute of Legislative Development and Transparency, PILDAT, which is a political and public policy think tank, focuses on democracy and governance. Mr. Mehboob is a political development specialist, has implemented projects in the development of political parties, democratic institutions, electoral reforms, and dialogues for reconciliation. Thank you for making time for us. Polls are being held long after the constitutionally mandated period of 3 months from the dissolution of the last assembly, and that's nearly 6 months late. Now, people in Pakistan should have ideally taken a sigh of relief because that would mean an end to the uncertainty. And yet we see very little enthusiasm around. There's muted and lackluster electoral activity, though it has picked up lately. Is it the lack of trust in the electoral process, as people have repeatedly learned that elections are more about power than addressing the country's issues? Or is it due to these challenging times, the cost of living crisis in particular, that has bogged people down so that they don't have the hope or the resources to indulge in another apparently fixed electoral exercise? Or is it both? What is your take on that?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on your program, on your show. I think there are multiple reasons for this. Number one, although this is somewhat, I agree that this is a lackluster kind of a campaign, there's not so much enthusiasm as you would see in a normal election in Pakistan. And one reason, maybe what you have just mentioned, that people have relatively low level of trust in the electoral process. This is the 12th general election we are seeing since 1970. And over a period of time, we have seen a number of elections where public will was not translated into the governments which later on were formed. And therefore, people have come to believe that it is not their will which always prevails. So that is one reason for having low level of interest. And other maybe there are reasons that now the election has been dragged on for more than 90 days and people had very little hope that elections will take place. So they were not very sure elections are going to take place. So they thought both the candidates, political parties, and the electorate, they thought elections may again be postponed. So they were not ready to put in their money, their resources into running a campaign. So that may have been another reason for a rather uh, not very enthusiastic campaign.
Yeah. So the government that comes to power will be faced with a plethora of challenges. People are battling Asia's highest inflation, with food prices rising around 38.5% year on year. There's poverty, there's the foreign policy fronts, there's political polarization, the stance which politicians usually have is punctuated by political expediency and the ever-changing dynamics in which elites don't seem to be invested in Pakistan's future. What we will probably have after the election is a coalition government. Do you see things changing for the better under this type of an arrangement? I mean, we haven't really had a very positive experience under the PDM government, for example.
One major issue in Pakistan's problems is not really the coalition government or inaptness of the politicians. I think that is not very different from many other countries who are doing quite well, both in economy, in governance, and other things. I think major problem in Pakistan is the duality of control on governance. Who really is the party which is mandated to run the affairs of the state, and who are the people who are probably pulling the levers of power. And this duality has been a major reason for Pakistan not performing so well. We have seen political parties without completing their term, they were removed, they were made to leave. This happened in 2017. This happened even earlier. This happened almost in every election. So hardly any prime minister was able to complete its term. So I think that is the major reason for all these problems. Otherwise, these problems are very normal for a country to face and governments to solve. But governments have not been able to solve them because of this duality, because the elected governments were not allowed to complete their term and not do their business, what they were entrusted to do.
And like you just pointed out, that there are people behind who are controlling everything. And this time around, it is the PTI, which is being sort of squashed between the courts and the constitutional institutions. And as we speak, Imran Khan has been sentenced to 10 years in prison in the Cypher case. So earlier, there was rejection of Imran Khan's nomination and revocation of PTI's election symbol. PTI candidates now will have to contest the elections as independents, will face difficulty keeping their elected members in line through the tenure of the next National Assembly. Do you think stripping PTI of its symbol is in fact stripping people of their right of political participation? It's kind of disenfranchisement of a large number of voters of their right to vote, considering that PTI is undoubtedly the most popular political party in the country.
There are 2-3 things which may not be very politically correct if I say, but I would have to say that because I strongly believe in them. And this is supported by the data. One is that PTI is the undoubtedly the most popular party of the country. This is yet to be established. It was most popular party at one time. Whether it retains its popularity at the moment or not, because some of the recent public opinion surveys are not indicating that. They're indicating that PTI popularity rating has gone down over the past 6 months or so gradually. And now probably PTI and PMLN are probably standing almost on the same footing. What will happen in the next couple of weeks when people go to the poll, yet to be seen. We have seen Nawaz Sharif's popularity dipping down 2 weeks before the election in 2018. And it was the most popular party 2 to 3 weeks before people went to the poll. So this is one. Secondly, regarding the election symbol, I think what has happened according to the Elections Act 2017, according to the law. And PTI was given more than one chance to hold intra-party election, which unfortunately, the last chance they just squandered. I think they should have been a little more careful after having been deprived of this symbol, and they were given 20 days to hold election. They were unable to hold election in a proper way according to their own constitution, and they hurriedly did it within 9 days. Although they had 20 days, they hurriedly did it in 9 days. So I think part of the blame at least goes to the people who were managing the affairs of PTI at that time. They should have organized election properly, especially after they had come to know that they were being scrutinized by the Election Commission very closely, very minutely. So they should have done that. So I think it is, while I sympathize with PTI in many other ways, that they are not being probably allowed to run their campaign. Their people are not being allowed to contest election the way they should have been allowed to. But having lost that electoral symbol, which is unprecedented in Pakistan, I think part of the blame goes to the people who managed PTI in its election.
Absolutely. So connecting what you've just said to what is happening in the country right now, the entire electoral process appears to be tainted with crackdowns, and they seem to be intensifying as February 8 nears. PTI workers are being arrested, there are clashes with police in Karachi and other cities, rallies are being dispersed, and PTI workers are being booked under terror charges. Now, we can see the heavy-handedness mounting. These optics don't reflect political freedom or right of self-determination, rather send out messages of stark intolerance, intimidation, suppression of the opposition and dissent. Looks like a level playing field that has almost become a buzzword. It is totally elusive. Can the Election Commission of Pakistan play a role here as custodian of political parties' right to campaign? Is it possible for them to step forward and somehow try to see that this does not go overboard?
I think it is the duty of the Election Commission to make sure that no party is deprived of the fair opportunity to run its campaign. It is their duty, it is their responsibility more than any other institution. And I can understand they do not have their own police and they don't have their own military, they don't have the muscle power, but at least they have the moral authority given by the Constitution to them. And if people are not heeding their advice and their orders, they should openly say that. So I think I agree with you that the Election Commission should assert itself and make sure that no government, whether provincial or federal or even local, is trying to deprive people of their fair chance to campaign and fair chance to attend political rallies, fair chance to attend peaceful campaigns. So I think Election Commission has the foremost responsibility. There's no doubt about it.
Even before the election has taken place, there is a speculation that February 8 will perhaps bring forth a government which will not last long. What is your take on that, and why do you think this conjecture is sort of doing the rounds? And I know there are always rumors when election take place, but this time in particular, the rumor somehow seems to be more like it's very much there. It's more rampant.
Your question is about the coming government after the
Yes,
election
the,
that
the
will
post
not
the
last
post
very
the
long.
post February election government.
I do not necessarily find that to be true, because it all depends upon the result of the election.
Mhm.
If result of the election is such that it reflects broadly, not ideally, but broadly it reflects the will of the people, and a party or a group of parties or a alliance of parties comes into power which broadly reflects the trust of the people, then most likely it will last. But that is not the only condition for its longevity. Another condition is, as I mentioned, that in the past, political parties and governments have been made to leave uh, because they fell out of their relationship with the establishment.
Mm.
So if establishment even this time found that they are not in line with their way of thinking, even if they are a popular government, they may be made to leave. So there are two basic conditions. One is that public trust, and second is the ability to work with the establishment. If one of these two conditions is not fulfilled, the government may have to leave.
And which is why perhaps people are holding that conjecture, because this is what happens here. So they probably feel there's a chance it's going to happen pretty too soon, maybe again. The fact that party manifestos were announced pretty late, though they might not even inspire much credibility within the masses, but yet they came in pretty late, and there were no details on most of the manifestos on how to deliver. They were more like to-do lists. For example, the PMLN manifesto promised clean drinking water. It's more export-oriented. They talk of green financing. And then earlier, the PPP came up with their goals. And again, there was no costing as to how they would double salaries, yeah, give free electricity units to the poor, or build 3 million homes. While PTI's current manifesto brings the model of Riyasat-e Medina, something that they have always talked about, and constitutional intact reforms, while notable among the listings is that the Prime Minister will directly be selected by the people. Now, is it a half-baked idea, since in a country where, like Pakistan, where polls don't really reflect people's will due to reasons which are quite known to everybody, how likable is it for the people to be able to elect a prime minister without interference or manipulation? Also, does such a step undermine the role of the parliament?
I'm glad you called it a half-baked idea, because in a parliamentary form of government, this is not the way Prime Minister is elected. It has a different kind of a philosophy where a collective government is run through a cabinet, and Prime Minister is the leader of the cabinet. And they're elected from the parliament, and powers reside with the parliament. And it is the parliament which removes them if they lose trust of the majority of members. I think they should have rather come out very openly and said that they would rather go for a presidential form of government, and then this would have made more sense. But having directly elected prime minister is something which is unheard of. Uh, so therefore, uh, I would say that this is something uh, which uh, which has to be debated quite a bit among the people in the parliament before this kind of a constitutional amendment could be accepted, because you will have to do the constitutional amendment to do that. And to get two-third majority in the parliament will require a lot of consensus building. And that seems to be very difficult, at least in the short-term future. You have mentioned about the manifestos. Sadly, in Pakistan, manifestos are not taken very seriously. People do not base their decision about voting on the manifestos. Very few people read it, and even fewer people make their decision according to the manifesto. And therefore, manifestos is a kind of a formality which every party completes, but tries to complete it rather casually and towards the very end when it is very close to the polling day. So therefore, these manifestos are good for think tanks, for research organizations, for international organizations to try to make some sense of the direction which party may take. But actually, for the people and for the masses, these manifestos do not really have a have any importance. They don't read it. They don't make their decision on this basis.
And maybe it's because people have not been seeing a lot of what is said in the manifestos turn into actions, and that's why they've also lost confidence. And maybe it's the way things happen here, because maybe in the developed world, manifestos I think hold a lot of central position in this whole electoral process, and people do read them, and they sort of expect the politicians and the leaders to at least fulfill some of the things that are mentioned there.
More than manifestos, people are swayed by the slogans, by the narratives which leaders tend to make in their speeches and their rallies. Manifesto is a more serious thing, and during elections, most of the people do not pay attention to serious things. They are more emotionally carried away by the slogans, by the narratives they build about the martyrdom of one leader or the other, or the victimhood of another leader. So these kind of emotive reasons are the ones which decide people's vote. I look forward to a future where there are no more emotive reasons, there are no more victims, there are no more martyrs, and people are able to make up their minds on dispassionately based on what is written in the manifestos. But that is not the situation at the moment.
Yes, for that we probably also need to take our literacy level up and work more on education.
Yes.
The caretaker government has received a lot of criticism for disrupting internet access for the whole country. Each of the last three outages took place concurrently with the PTI's pre-announced digital jalsas. Now, it's also disturbing that the PTA has said that there might be further outages as elections draw nearer, something which will not only impact the economy in these times of remote working options, perhaps it'll cause us losses in billions, not only to businesses, but also to individuals. Now, social media platforms are also prominent fronts in the war of political narratives, and they are being restricted closer to the polls. PTI moved their website recently to GitHub after their previous websites were blocked. How far do you think is the government going to go with this clampdown? I mean, there appears to be no end to this.
My very frank assessment is they will go to any extent to make sure that PTI does not return to power. And even it doesn't have a sizable presence in the parliament. This is my very frank assessment. So this is what has been happening in the past. We have seen this happening in 2018. Government went to any extent to remove a party, to declare its party's head disqualified for life, removing him from chairmanship of the party. And not only that, many of the party stalwarts were also jailed. Even the tickets issued by the party head were not accepted, and they were made to run as independent candidates in the Senate election. So they went to any extent. And this has happened with Pakistan People's Party. This has happened with PMLN. And this is happening with PTI. And this may happen with any other party in future. I don't know how long it will last. But you asked me a question and I gave you a very blunt answer to that. They will go to any extent. We have never seen in the past elections that a party which has been removed has returned to power in the immediately next election. This is not a coincidence, and I think same is going to happen this time. Sad but true.
Yeah, but does the government realize that this time there's a huge number of young voters that has been added? The surge, I think, has gone up to 56.8 million from 46 million in 2018. And the youth, they formulate almost 44% of the voters, placing this group in a position to play a game-changing role in determining the outcome of elections. We can perhaps expect a lot of upsets with this changed demographic. And does the state realize that it's dealing with a predominantly digital generation, perhaps not as easy to mute online and otherwise as the government might think?
Young voters' percentage had been more or less the same since the last election, and even before that, 44%. Although the number has increased, but the percentage has remained the same. But the problem with young people is that while they have such a large percentage of registered voters, they don't turn out to vote. We have seen in the past 8 elections that while the average overall voter turnout was around 45%, the young people's voter turnout was around 31%. So about 14 percentage points lower than the average, which is quite in contrast to India, where young people vote more than the average voter turnout. There it was 69% in 2019 compared to 66% for the overall average. So young people don't turn out to vote. They turned out to vote in greater numbers, relatively greater numbers in 2013. And I think probably it was Imran Khan phenomena which made them come out to vote. And they voted around, I think, 37% at that time. But since then, they have again gone down in 2018. And I'm not sure if they are going to vote this time. Although I think we have tried to do our best to encourage them that whatever be their perception about the manipulation of election, they must turn out to vote. If there are more people turning out to vote, the chances of manipulating the election will be less. Although one cannot rule out any possibility, but young people and old people or any age people should come out to vote in as many numbers as possible if they want to really see that their vote and their power is reflected in the results of the election.
Bilawal Bhutto has told the PTI supporters to vote for the PPP while being critical of PMLN, the same PMLN with which it ganged up to oust Imran Khan and later formed a coalition in 2022. He has told disgruntled PTI voters that if they wish to prevent Nawaz Sharif from another stint as the Prime Minister, they should not waste their votes by voting for these independent candidates. Now, that's politically adept, but do you think it'll work given that the PPP was an active part of bringing down the PTI government? And also Imran Khan has already responded to this by saying that they would not align with PPP because it is also a beneficiary of the same system. And now here is someone from the youth, from their cohort, a young politician appealing primarily to the youth. Can Bilawal's younger leadership narrative attract young voters to his party?
It remains to be seen, but I think at some local level, there may be some independent candidates supported by PTI may join hands with Pakistan People's Party. after the election or even before the election. But I think PTI has done a wonderful job in letting people in each constituency know who are the real candidates of PTI, despite the fact they do not carry the symbol of PTI and they are officially independent candidates. But I think they have been very good at communicating these things through social media in the past, and even now they have done a wonderful job. So anybody who is supporting PTI would know who is the bona fide candidate of PTI in that constituency. And if they want to support PTI, they will vote for them. So it is there's no reason for them to vote for any other party just because they do not have an election symbol.
Yes.
And you're right that People's Party was a part of PDM coalition government, and therefore it is not fair to expect PTI to support them because they had been part of the plans which destroyed PTI to that extent. People's Party has a right to demand votes on its own merit from young people, and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari has a right to say that, look, I'm a young person and I understand the aspirations of young people and therefore vote for me. That's fair. But asking PTI supporters to vote because they do not have a symbol may not work, in my assessment.
I think PTI has responded pretty well, and they have really adapted to all these challenges, and they are overcoming them quite nicely. We have some fringe parties in this election as well as we have in all of them, but in this case particularly, we have some breakaway factions from PTI, like Istehkam-e-Pakistan Party and PTI parliamentarians. As many parties together have fielded a high number of candidates, and I was going through your op-ed in Dawn the other day, in which you said that around 18,000 are contesting 1,125 seats in the National Assembly and the 4 provincial assemblies. And you also wrote that never before in the history of the past general elections have we seen, on average, over 19 candidates competing for a single National Assembly seat. So what role are fringe parties going to play in this election? TLP, I would like you to talk a little about what type of challenges TLP is going to pose, and where do you see IPP going in the post-poll power dynamics?
In my opinion, these parties will have very limited success within their areas. There are some good politicians among them, like Jahangir Khan Tareen, like Mr. Aleem Khan. Individually, they may be successful, and they have done very well whatever positions they were in before. But grassroots popularity is something which, except for these two politicians and Mr. Pervez Khattak, I don't know if other politicians enjoy. So I think very limited seats will be won by these parties, because breaking away from PTI will not lend them any credibility. PTI credibility and PTI popularity depends on the sole factor of the popularity of Mr. Imran Khan. If Mr. Imran Khan is with a party, that party will get the credibility which PTI had. And if Mr. Imran Khan is not with them, that will not happen. So I don't think any popularity of PTI has rubbed on to IPP and to PTI parliamentarian. So I think I foresee a very limited success if the elections are fair for these two political parties.
No prime minister in Pakistan has ever completed a full term, and this may partially be the reason some of those out of favor this time would be content in the belief that while February's election may seem beyond their reach, in Pakistan you may be temporarily down, but you're never truly out. I thank Mr. Bilal for enlightening our viewers. However hopeless the situation, exercise your democratic right and cast your vote this February 8. Allah Hafiz and goodbye.